Did you know that once you're burnt out, it can take months of doing literally nothing to cure it? That's what physicians say anyway. So when we talk about burnout, we are talking about preventing it because you and I both know that you do not have time to heal from it. So we got to make sure it doesn't happen to begin with. I get a lot of questions about burnout because I am an author. By the end of next year, I will have done 3 books in 3 years. And your girl's got a day job, a career, if you will. So how do I do that? How do I maintain that pace without burning out? I've had to be really careful about that because I am neurodivergent, and so the way that my brain works, it's really easy for me to burn out. So I've had to be very diligent about understanding what does and does not work, not just for me, but like in general, so that I can make sure that that does not happen because I do not have the time or patience to let myself truly flame out. So today I'm going to give you 6 tips for how to prevent burnout if you want to write and have a day job or write and have other commitments. It'll apply to really any other commitments that you have, but we do have one day job specific tip in here. So let's start with number 1, which is fix your mindset. I want you to get really crystal clear on like, what are your goals for your writing? Is it something you just want to do as a hobby? Is it something that you would eventually like to make your career? Regardless of the answer, it's probably something that you see yourself doing forever. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. So if it's something that you want to do for a long time, you have to start thinking of it as a marathon, not a sprint. And I hate that analogy because a marathon also sounds really hard, like objectively harder than a sprint. So instead, let's think of it as like a really nice long walk. But the point is we need it to be sustainable. And it's really important to adopt the mindset of sustainability. Is this a pace I can sustain forever? And if the answer is no, it probably has no place in your writing practice now, no matter how ambitious it might seem and no matter how much closer it's gonna make you feel like you're getting to what you want. It doesn't usually work that way. Slow and steady very much wins the race here. Which brings me to tip number 2, which is be so fucking for real. Be honest with yourself. And I want you to be honest with yourself about a few things. First of all, I want you to be ruthlessly honest about what your priorities in life are. And I mean everything. What are your priorities? Your relationship, if you've got kids, if you've got family obligations, your career, taking care of your house, feeding yourself good meals, getting lots of exercise. I want you to take inventory of all the other things in your life and prioritize them. What is most important? What is more important than writing? What is less important than writing for you? Everybody's priority list is going to look different, but you absolutely have to understand where writing falls in that pecking order before you can go about determining what a good writing practice looks like for you. Because if you're trying to fit writing around things that aren't as important, or if you're using writing to try to overwrite other things that are important, both of those are going to create chaos and conflict in your life, which is then going to create shame within yourself about not fulfilling your obligations or your desires. I also want you to be super honest with yourself about your capabilities. And I don't mean like on a craft level as a writer. I mean about your stamina, basically. For example, I cannot just sit down and spend 8 hours writing unless I'm on a deadline. I have friends that have chronic illnesses and they just don't have more than an hour or 2 of work in them at a time. I want you to be super honest with yourself about where you're at there because we don't want to overextend you. If we overextend you, you're going to burn out. So be honest about where your limits are. And I want you to err on the side of not getting anywhere near those limits. And I also want you to be honest about what are the things that give you energy and give you life within your life. Maybe you actually feel super energized after scrolling through TikTok, or maybe like me, playing games, whether that's role-playing games in person or video games. I like to play The Sims and listen to an audiobook. Maybe it's reading. What are the things in your life that give you joy and give you energy? I want you to be honest with yourself about those things as well. And we're going to come back to why that is. But that honesty and that like self-awareness is so crucial to preventing burnout because so much of burnout stems from the fact that we are pushing ourselves past our limits because we didn't know where those limits were to begin with. So by being honest about your priorities, your capabilities, and your interests, you're going to be able to define those limits better so that you can stay away from them. Tip number 3, this is our day job specific tip. And actually it's most specific to those who work like an office or corporate job. I personally have worked food service and childcare. If you're a laborer or work in hospitality or retail, this might not apply as much to you because there's less flexibility in those jobs. They're more defined in terms of location, in terms of hours, like there's less room for sort of scope creep in that. But you might find a little bit of value from this anyway. Tip number 3 is to finesse your day job. Now, I get it. Your career is important to you, or maybe it's not. I don't want to presume, but like, my career is important to me. First of all, that's what pays my bills. Second of all, I actually get a lot of enjoyment out of it. It's important. I want you to like understand how much extra you need to be giving in order to reach your career goals. For me, I made a decision that I just want to work my contracted hours. I don't want to commit additional time. Obviously, if I'm like traveling for work or something, that's different, but like my contracted hours are kind of it for me because of where my writing sits within my priorities. For you, you might want to have additional time outside of your contracted hours that you want to commit so that you can get ahead, so you can meet your targets, whatever it is. But I want you to have a really clear idea of what your commitment to work looks like on a practical level. And then I want you to adapt that as much as possible to be conducive to your writing practice. And here are a couple of ways that you can do that. First of all, remote working. I work fully remotely, which I think works really well for me. This isn't about using, your work hours to do your writing. I'm not about that, and we'll come to that in a minute. It's more about not having to deal with a commute, being able to just shut one laptop, open the next, not having to bring a personal laptop to work so you can work over your lunch break, things like that. It just makes it a lot easier to balance those things. If you're able to finesse some remote working or some hybrid working, it might mean that you very clearly have certain days that make more sense to do your writing, and it will help you establish more of a schedule, which again can help prevent burnout. If you have a predictable schedule, you know when is allotted for writing, you're less likely to overextend yourself. The other thing you can do though, if you have some degree of autonomy in your job, or at least in terms of how you organize your tasks, is to spread out tasks that pull from the same energy as your writing. This one's a really important one for burnout because if you're in a job like I am where I'm writing articles and I'm writing marketing emails, things like that, those tasks pull from the same energy that writing my books does. So I like to make sure that I organize my schedule and I organize my workload so that those things are being done in a more spread out way. Or if you're going to be writing on specific days, maybe to coincide with remote working days or just other parts of your schedule, you might lump all of those tasks that pull from a similar energy into one day. Pay attention to what makes you feel drained in that way and what doesn't, so that you can make sure that you're setting yourself up for success in your writing sessions. Because if you drain that part of your energy and then you go and try to have a whole writing session, it's going to make you feel a lot more tired. It's going to make you less want to come back to it the next day. It's going to make you less likely to sustain that practice moving forward. Or if you do, you're going to more likely feel burnt out. The next tip I have is to make sure that you're refilling your creative well. Creative energy is a finite resource and we need to replenish it if we're going to have it to spend. Similar to how I said, pay attention to what at work drains that energy, pay attention to what in your life gives you that energy, like we were talking about in the being honest with yourself tip. What are the hobbies that make you feel creatively refreshed? For most writers, reading will play some factor in that. You absolutely should be reading within your genre, but be honest with yourself because maybe reading doesn't do that for you the way it does for some other people. Don't force yourself to do as much of it then, because your goal is to protect your creative energy and to refill it, not to continuously drain it just because you should be reading. Figure out what it is that actually fills you up. Maybe it's movement, maybe it's gaming, maybe it's making something like knitting or crocheting or pottery or whatever. Maybe it is reading. Maybe it's your social life. What are the things that make you feel creatively fulfilled, and refill that well within you, and make sure that you're scheduling time for those things. Remember that all the free time that you could be giving to writing shouldn't all just be going to writing. It should be going to the things that support writing, and anything that fills your creative well is supporting your writing. Tip number 5, set gentle goals for yourself. I personally don't like word count goals because what you're able to achieve in a set amount of time is going to be so variable from one day to the next. I think that if you have created a schedule that works for you, that time investment, how much time you are spending writing, should be your ultimate goal. So for me, I shared this in a recent video where I was breaking down how much time I actually spend writing. That's like 7 hours a week during normal time. It's a bit more during deadline mode, but during normal time, it's like 7 hours a week. That is my writing goal. My writing goal is 7 hours a week. It's not 5,000 words a week or 1,000 words a day or 500 words a day. It's about the time investment. Now, I know from experience that that will net out to what I need it to net out to in order to support the output that I want. But I only know that from experience. And even for people that are just getting into writing or just really establishing their writing practice, I would still recommend time investment goals over word count goals. And this is to help prevent burnout, especially when you've got other responsibilities on your plate. Now, I personally don't tend to struggle with super low word counts or feeling like if I'm investing that time, I'm not getting enough done. So I don't necessarily have any tips around that. However, I think it was Hannah Kidder that did a video a while back about this that I found really insightful. So I'll leave a link to that in the description if I can dig it out. So that way, you know, your only responsibility, the only obligation you have from a writing perspective is to turn up and write for the allotted amount of time. And if you have done that, you have succeeded. On the flip side, if you're setting word count goals for yourself, imagine if like you were just really tired and drained one day and you had this 1,000 words goal that you had to reach. And normally maybe that only takes you an hour or 2 hours, but this time you get those 2 hours done and you've got like 500 words. Now you've got to spend double the amount of time to do that. Not only is that time, and so you're tired and you're more drained and you're less likely to want to come back to it tomorrow, but also that's taking away time from something else, either from another obligation, which is going to make you feel ashamed, or from something that was going to refill that creative well, bringing you one step closer to burnout. So this is why I don't really like word count targets. I love a NaNoWriMo as much as the next girly, but got to be careful with it, especially when you're just starting out. Try to be gentle with yourself in terms of your goals. Remember, it's a nice long walk, not a sprint. And finally, number 6, hold your boundaries firmly. Protect your writing time and protect all your other time from your writing. My writing sprints that I do, my 7 hours a week, that is when I do my writing. If I have other ideas another time, I will proactively save that for my writing session. You got to be firm with those boundaries. And the same goes the other way. Your writing time is protected. Make sure you are not letting other things bleed into that. Because if you let work bleed into your writing time, you're more likely to let your writing bleed into work, which is going to make you feel like you need to catch up on the work. And it just creates that shame spiral that brings us closer to burnout. So those boundaries being really firmly held is what's going to help you maintain the confidence and the self-assurance that you are doing what you need to be doing, which is what's going to make you feel fulfilled. And fulfillment is the opposite of burnout. Like I said, I've got a video that I put up last week about how much time I actually spend writing. I think you'll enjoy that video if you enjoyed this one, so I'll leave a link in the description. And I also have another video about habits of highly successful authors that I think is really relevant too, so I'll leave a link for that one as well. Super excited about next week's videos. We've got the mid-year book freakout tag, but also one that's a little bit different than other stuff that I've done. So make sure you're subscribed if you want to see that. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Bye.